Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Today, a federal judge declined to rule on former President Trump's request for a special master. She heard arguments just 2 days after the DOJ accused a Trump attorney of falsifying a certification. An attorney tells NTD's Arlene Richards both sides are playing games.
After hearing oral arguments Thursday on whether or not to appoint a special master, Judge Eileen Cannon has decided to think about it a little bit longer. Cannon had hinted in a preliminary order that she would likely appoint someone to review the documents seized from former President Trump's Florida home. But just 2 days ago, the DOJ presented the judge with an allegation that a Trump attorney lied about turning over all classified documents. An attorney told me the judge will probably still appoint a special master, but says the Trump team played the wrong game when it left out some classified documents.
What the attorney could have done once they got the grand jury subpoena in May of this year is object to it, object to its scope, object to what they're seeking, or even just seek clarification as to what they're seeking. But Trump's attorneys didn't do that. They purported to comply with the subpoena. And I think now they're in a bit of trouble because they didn't object to it.
But he says both sides are playing games. On one side, the DOJ says Trump withheld classified documents. On the other side, Trump says he declassified all the documents.
The truth is, neither of those opinions matter at all, because DOJ was actually pretty careful, maybe sneaky, whatever you want to call it, in terms of how they worded the subpoena. The subpoena did not talk about classified documents at all. It only talked about things that are labeled classified. So that's kind of the trick there.
He said Trump's team was also tricky about how they worded their certification and didn't comply fully with the subpoena.
If you don't just take the exact language from the subpoena and copy it over into your certification, say, I have done everything in the subpoena, and just copy and paste basically the language. If you start changing that language around, of course, that's going to raise red flags on the other side. So I don't think that was very smart.
According to the attorney, the subpoena issue has nothing to do with whether the court should appoint a special master. And a photo of top secret documents that the DOJ gave to the court should not have been submitted. Arlene Richards, NTD News, New York.
2 states are demanding answers from the Biden administration. Their lawsuit unveils direct communications between the government and big tech companies. Here's NTD's Iris Tao with what they found and why they say it's a coordinated effort to censor free speech.
More pressure on a Department of Justice already under fire. In a Wednesday statement to the court, attorney generals from Missouri and Louisiana are demanding the DOJ turn over communications between top-ranking officials and big tech companies. That comes after their lawsuit, first filed in May, forced the DOJ to turn over emails showing dozens of federal officials communicating with platforms about what's seen as misinformation.
So what the discovery has revealed is a really massive coordinated effort between the federal government and big tech to censor the speech of Americans who disagree with the government on various topics. COVID is a big one, also the election, the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Janine Eunice, an attorney representing private plaintiffs who also joined the lawsuit, tells NTD that a discovery shows the White House and agencies pressuring tech companies to censor unfavorable topics.
Now, what keeps happening is as we learn more information, we keep finding more and more people are involved. This is larger and more sweeping than anybody ever knew.
In one of the uncovered emails, a Facebook official in 2021 wrote to the Surgeon General, quote, "Our teams met today to better understand the scope of what the White House expects from us on misinformation going forward." So government officials talking to social media companies about misinformation, how is that a problem?
That's an issue because it implicates the First Amendment. So the First Amendment prohibits the government from creating laws or being really involved in policing the speech of Americans. When the government is using tech companies to do that, that's effectively state action. The government can't just use private actors to do what it can't do directly.
While the DOJ has turned over communications by some federal officials, the suing states say the DOJ is refusing to reveal ones involving the highest-ranking officials. The Missouri Attorney General said on Thursday they're asking the DOJ to produce those records and that they're just getting started. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin lost to Democrat Mary Peltola on Wednesday in a special election to fill Alaska's only U.S. House seat. Peltola is a former state lawmaker. She defeated Palin by around 3 percentage points, receiving 51% of the vote.
We have just begun, and it's a fight for what is right for Alaska and for our nation. And I do repeat that you don't need a title, you don't need an office to make a difference. So we're going to get out there using whatever tools and forums and formats that we have to fight for what's right.
I intend to be, in so many ways, really trying to live up to the legacy that Don laid for Alaska.
Peltola will finish the remainder of the term of Republican Congressman Don Young, which expires at the end of this year. Young left the seat vacant when he died in March this year at the age of 88. He served for 49 years. Peltola is the first Alaskan native to represent a state where almost 20% of the population is indigenous. She will also be the first woman to hold the seat. The Democrat will later face re-election on November 8th. Palin and Republican Nick Begich are expected to compete for the House seat for the full term. Governor Greg Abbott said Wednesday that Texas is now busing illegal border crossers to Chicago, along with New York City and Washington, D.C. Abbott said that Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot loves to tout that her city welcomes illegal immigrants. Lightfoot's office accused Abbott of having no shame or humanity. Both D.C. and New York mayors have complained that they lack resources. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has called it a humanitarian crisis and twice asked President Biden to send in the National Guard. Her requests were denied. By sending buses to sanctuary cities, Abbott says he hopes to make a point about the impact of Biden's, quote, open border policies.
They are seeing the chaos that has been caused by the Biden administration. Well, I got news for New York. I got news for Washington, D.C., as well as the rest of the country. We are not done yet. There are more cities on our list.
Abbott is also trying to provide relief to overrun border towns. The governor plans to keep the buses running until the president secures the border. The border crisis is not the only issue affecting Texas. The Lone Star State is known for its energy production, but as energy policies become more restrictive, the state is faced with massive challenges. We sat down with Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Doyen.
Congresswoman, I want to ask you, Texas is obviously a big energy producing state. How have the policies of the Biden administration affected the people of Texas?
Well, you think about it, it's not just the direct energy companies. It's all the indirect, tangential companies as well. It has affected them in a really disastrous manner, as it has people from across the country. If you're looking at the industry itself and how the Biden administration policies have basically demonized that entire industry, layers upon layers of regulation, warning banks don't do business with these companies because they're not going to be in existence in 10 years. Not to mention the fact that what it's sending to the rest of the world. 2 years ago, we were energy independent. Regulations were going away. They were being much more streamlined, and we were a very attractive energy market. And not only were we able to provide for the needs of our country and for our state, but also for the needs of other countries. So we were be able to have that kind of influence without even having to use our military. And now it's disastrous policies, and not to mention the fact that everybody is paying more at the pump. Paying so much more at the pump, which affects anything that you purchase, any service that you buy. And the working families that have to drive the longest distance to get to their jobs are suffering.
So how much of the energy crisis has to do with the war that we're seeing in Ukraine?
I love that is the cop-out of this administration, but from day one, the Biden administration already had formed a war against U.S. energy companies. From day one, through an executive order, Biden shut down the expansion of the Keystone Pipeline, immediately started adding additional regulations, added trillions of dollars in policies that adversely, negatively affected the energy industry, while at the same time greatly, almost grossly subsidizing markets that directly competed with it. We look in Texas, for example. We look at our grid here, third largest in the country. We have already had 25 different records that have been set from this hot summer already. If we had relied solely on renewable energies, over half of the state during peak times would have been in a blackout. 37% of our energy use in Texas is renewables. And there were times during peak needs that our wind energy was at 2% capacity. And what ends up happening is these super subsidies are given to the renewable energies, and when they make bids, they can underbid the thermal providers, the thermal energy providers, which really distorts what the market is, and it pushes prices higher for the thermal energy companies, and it pushes them out. But the fact is that if we want reliable power, the reliable power right now is found in thermals, it's found in coal, it's found in liquid natural gas, it's found in nuclear, and we are doing nothing but pushing them outside of the market. We're relying on renewable energies, which is not reliable. And as a result, you're seeing people across the state during these triple digits heat wave actually dying.
Do you envision a path? Is there a pathway to, have more renewables and at the same time go back to producing energy on our own?
It's absolutely imperative that we have diverse forms of energy. I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that. But the fact is that you are using taxpayer dollars to cripple the energy industry. We will never be dependent 100% on renewable energies. It will not happen. They don't have enough power and they don't have enough consistency during peak times. So instead of making an enemy out of the U.S. energy market, instead of having to rely on foreign powers and foreign countries that are many times adverse to U.S. interests, look at what we have here in the U.S. We have the cleanest energy in the world. Why are we not using that? Why are we going to Saudi Arabia? Why are we going to Venezuela? Places that produce energy a lot dirtier than we do. If our focus is on having a clean environment, then look at U.S. energy production, but stop punishing it.
If you could just kind of break down how energy is tied into national security.
Well, look at basically, in order to be able to have manufacturing, in order to be able to have any kind of industry, you need to have reliant, resilient, and affordable energy. When we start messing with that formula, it pushes those manufacturing companies to other countries. It forces us to be reliant for simple things like gas, like heat and energy in our houses, electricity in our houses. It forces us to look at other suppliers. And in some instances, those other suppliers are countries that wish us harm. So from a purely national perspective of what we need to be able to be independent for our own country, looking at U.S. production is the better way to go.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was great to see you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.